Good morning and welcome to the third AI Impact podcast with Scott Howard and Mark Brown. How are you, Mr. Brown?
I'm very well, thanks, Scott. You?
Good? Yeah, I'm not bad at all. Yeah, it's a bit warmer today and not raining, so no complaints on the classic British topic of the weather to start things off. So today, quite excited today. We've got two totally different topics to cover. One is a look at the philosophy or theory around how AI should impact society generally at a global level, and a look at the inequalities between East and West and different countries and how that should be treated. And Mark's going to interrogate me on some of what I use as a top 3 to 5 things to do at the kickoff of an AI project, to try to help any potential listener navigate away and avoid the pitfalls of leadership that's potentially just saying, get me the new shiny thing, or just go get me the AI, without in fact clarity as to what outcomes are being sought. Hey, does that cover us, Mark? Does that work?
Yeah, I think that's a nice intro, Scott.
Okay. So without further ado, where are we at? 9:56. That was a quick start. So Mark, yeah, you've been reading like a crazy man this week, and you've gone pretty big into some fat topics.
Yeah.
So what have you been doing, and what's piqued your interest this week?
So, yeah, I was having a look for some topics to cover on the podcast, and I came across an article referencing a report that's been released by the United Nations Development Programme, specifically their Asia Pacific Bureau. And the report's titled "The Next Great Divergence: Why AI May Widen the Inequality Between Countries."
It was UN, it was MIT and LSE people as well, along with the UN. So it was a big hitting panel, wasn't it?
Yeah, they did well to cross some boundaries. They brought Thailand education into it, and China, and kind of got quite a lot of academics behind it. Yeah,
So
it's 130.
What were they trying to achieve?
So they wanted to illuminate the fact that we've experienced what they've titled great divergences in the past. And what this means is that different countries, so the first great divergence was the Industrial Revolution. And so they talk about in the early 1800s, there was no country that had a life expectancy of over 40. Only 12% of the world's population could read, and there was almost no income gap between today's rich and poor regions.
So, yeah.
However,
so medicine, Industrial Revolution, and now tech.
Yeah. So as a result of that divergence, Britain, Western Europe, and North America pulled ahead in terms of income, health, and education. So much so that by 1950, they talk about a Norwegian having an average life expectancy of 72 years of age, and an Afghan still only 28 years of age, which is almost half a century. Within that time frame, between the start of the Industrial Revolution and now, we've had several general purpose technologies that have compounded that divergence. Some of the most recent being the internet and electricity, but mechanization, steam, etc. And what happens with these divergences is the countries that are best placed to capitalize on these innovations, they increase in prosperity, and human development is better than in the countries that can't. So they're trying to illuminate the fact that right now we're one thing is, so we've had what they've called the Great Convergence. So in the late 20th century, in the last 4 decades, we've seen medical transformative technologies like vaccines and antibiotics that have been shared with countries that were lagging, and we've seen agricultural benefits like higher crop yields, and containerization has meant trade could be better with shipping. So a lot of these countries that had fallen behind have caught up
So
and
it wasn't all
converged.
a bad news story then, especially when it's talking about Asia. I mean,
Yeah,
Africa struggled much more than Asia to
yeah,
benefit from those things.
Africa's still down there, but as an example, China was considered a poor country, but they've achieved near universal education and improved health in just a few generations. And
Yeah,
the global life expectancy now is over 72 years of age, which is higher than in 1950. And now we've got almost 90% of the world's population being able to read, in contrast with
yeah.
10% in 1820. So, yeah, there was a
What were the key
divergence that.
insights then that you got to? Oh, go on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
So yeah, there's the divergence, then the convergence, but now we've got AI, which is the next general purpose technology, and so they want to raise awareness of the fact that if we don't act quickly because of the pace of AI, then we risk a widening of equality between
Yeah,
countries, and this and the next great divergence, as is the title of the
yeah,
report.
yeah. And I think, I mean, I think this makes a lot of sense because, for all intents and purposes, beyond the cost of domain names and hosting, the internet was relatively free, whereas the cost of token and compute in AI is certainly not free, and therefore, yeah, I think there is a greater risk of divergence between countries that have got the resources, like China and Korea, and perhaps less so in African nations and the poorer Asian countries.
Yes. So they wanted to shine a light on the huge diversity in the Asia Pacific, and they described it as a laboratory to test uh, how the rollout of AI is, the equity of it. They've got people living in mountain communities and small islands that struggle just to have basic power needs, and uh, no broadband. Like, how are these people being represented in
Yeah,
the grand scheme of AI? So time flies quick, and I've just glanced at my stopwatch there. So I drew three opinions, or it resonated with three opinions that I have, and one of them is that I believe that to attempt to predict the future of AI is futile. At the
mm,
moment, its ultimate capacity for societal upheaval or profound disruption is, it's simply not known. And I think the report wanted to shine a light on that. And I think it's one of the takeaways from the report is, given the accelerated pace of AI, our imperative should be to make sure it becomes a tool for systemic equality rather than the architect of a new age of unequal abundance.
right.
And to try and end on a positive note, I think it articulates that the true goal of AI should be to expand human capability and to ensure that every person has the opportunity to learn, earn, and live safer and healthier lives. It's not just about compute, data centers, stock prices, and GDP. It should be a tool for good that benefits the global population.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's good. I mean, it feels like an aspirational goal when our liberal democracies are a little bit under threat right now, and and the alternative hypothesis is a potential robot war scenario as played out by lots of sci-fi movies. Do you buy into that? Do you think that when you looked at it in depth, did it feel just right, a little bit naive, or what? Did you come away thinking, yeah, this is a manifesto for how AI should be rolled out, or did it feel like it needed being changed slightly to be presentable to the Trump administration in the US?
In a time where I see AI achieving tasks that I have identified as being my professional worth and wondering what my place in the world becomes, and not knowing what to tell my 15-year-old kids they should do about their career paths and their future, this report I thought was inspiring and presented some hope and optimism. And I think I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah, nice. That's cool. I'll play the cynical old man in this podcast, but yeah, I really enjoyed reading it as well. All 175 pages, which I definitely didn't read, but got into. So anyone who is interested, there's some key messages. There's a conclusion you can definitely do. And like everything that's written by great academics, it's got a really good content section, so you can pull out the bits that you like. Right, thanks for that, Mark. That's great and really illuminating. I think, yeah, food for thought and an opportunity for hope. In that it's not just going to be the people with the wealthiest private equity investors that are able to benefit from this new technology, but in fact, it might go. At least we can hope that it trickles down, as the internet has done quite successfully, I guess. A lot of people in Africa who were unbanked able now to do banking via mobile phone stuff who'd never have again generators rather than electricity. So that gave me hope years ago to hear the banking sector for the poorest people in the world opened up to enable them to invest in their farms and things. So I hope that we get there. How long it takes to get there, well, we'll wait and see.
So shall we move on to the next topic then, Scott?
Yeah. Let me reset my timer. Yeah, go on.
So my question to you is, as organisations of varying sizes are rushing to install AI everywhere in their processes, what are the top things you would tell a technology leader to do first?
Yeah, so as 2025 comes to an end, I think if there was one thing that I would like a flag to put up in every office, it would be to say, right, thank goodness the year of everybody's boss saying, go get me the AI so that I can tell the shareholders that we've got AI. We are an AI. We've got AI all over our organization. And then we can, similar to in the dot-com era where it was just get us a website, we can get into the best conversations happen just after that, which is what's the difference between a successful implementation and an unsuccessful implementation. And so really what I'd like to leave on the table is could be completely wrong, but my opinion on things to do on a traffic light system, things to do while we're at red, things to do while we're at orange, and things to do. So sort of 3 to 5 things. So number one, it sounds simple to say, but it starts simple. Important to find processes that are well understood already within the organization. So it may well be that there is a huge ROI, business intelligence or growth opportunity within the AI plan within an organization, but it might be a good idea to get the organization's teams between technology, data, and the AI teams working together on a simple project with a fast ROI. So that might well be about efficiency around relatively paper-based or mundane processes that exist currently, but they're well understood by a number of people so that their insights can be shared. That is to say that with that, it says don't just oversimplify or replace existing software with something that's called AI, because that would be a common pitfall, but is to build a backlog of what are the other use cases, all looking with a mentality of let's build small wins into big wins. So think in terms of incremental release. so that there is a clear ROI case feeding back on a loop within the organization. So it prevents the risk of, like traditional software projects using waterfall methodology, often go into a 1 to 2 year cycle and there's no ROI. There's nothing, there's no customer feedback loop coming back for a long period of time. So that's to be avoided because AI is much more complex than deterministic software and code that by and large does what it's told, as opposed to AI, which has a tendency to often do what it's not told to do. So I've got a little visual. I'm going to attempt a share screen that illustrates the point I'm trying to make. Share screen. Give me a thumbs up if this is working. Untitled Miro. You see that? Okay, great. So this is a clumsy and not particularly well drawn, but it is the idea that fundamentally, again, point number 2, if there's no data, then there's no machine learning. If there's no machine learning, in theory, there's no AI. You could argue that generative AI is slightly different to that, but for the basis of this, in terms of integration with an organization's processes, this is key. So this triangle can sit in 2 ways. One is we have some ideas for efficiencies, business insights, growth opportunities, or competitive advantage over our competitor who's not going through this process. We can hopper those into a set of ideas. And I guess tip number 3 would be is to plot an X and Y graph that says the return on investment of that idea over the level of difficulty and the quality of data that we know will be feeding that idea. So that's an easy way collaboratively across the 3 functions, which are business leadership or product ownership or strategy, the tech guys and the data guys. And the important thing here is that another key tip is it shouldn't be a technology-led thing. Of course, technology is central to this, but if anything, data is arguably more central. And without data, strategy, and tech working together, again, that will create a risk factor with regard to success. Now, the reason why strategy and implementation are at the top and the bottom of this is because it must operate as a wheel. Machine learning, certainly I know from working on You Only Look Once visual recognition projects for an energy client that was identifying the number of birds that were being caught in a wind farm that was built near a bird sanctuary. It took approximately 50 to 80 rounds of machine learning for the AI model to be able to get the level of recognition to differentiate between a bird, a black and white puffin, and a rock that had some quartz in it, or a baby seagull. So a key point there is don't expect success to be straight out of the box. It's not. There's nothing in AI that is one and done, and that's probably about the most important thing I think I would share. Anything you'd say on that, Mark?
Yeah, it's a lived experience for me as a developer, having CEOs or stakeholders of some description coming wanting something and thinking we have these legacy data sets that have typically grown in some organic fashion into a coherent mess, and it just doesn't work with AI off the bat. And the explanation that there's pre-work to be done in some form of data cleansing, laundry, I've also heard it called, is not met with excitement because of there's costs and time implications with them. And so that's like the input channel that you've talked about. The data needs to be there for performant AI. And then there's also the expectation that, like with software, as you've mentioned, if you plan it well enough, you hopefully get it right first time as well as can be expected. But with the non-deterministicness of AI and the immaturity of the tooling to use it and the platforms we use. There's an iterative process to go from what it gives you the first time to fine-tune that to be what you were actually looking for. And both of these things are obstacles that aren't met with they're
I mean, not... you hit on something really nice there, which is one is that somebody much smarter than me said the problem with data projects is they never end. So when we say we'll only start once we know we've got 100% clean data, and I think the successes of the massive houses of Palantir and Databricks have been on the basis of the fact saying you build a data lake and you accept the state that it's in. So my point is at least have knowledge of the data within the organization. So when you go into a continuous improvement deployment cycle and you're using a shared test and learn, you've got data expertise within the organization that says, oh, we know why it did that. And we know we're still working on it. Or we know we need to ring fence that section of data and take that out of the next experiment. Okay. But we are creating, if the term experiment culture is uncomfortable for the organization, leadership needs to step up quick. Otherwise, AI is going to be really difficult. Because you also said, you alluded there, deterministic. If we say that probabilistic outcomes is the big banner that sits on top of all of this, that would make an awful lot of IT guys deeply uncomfortable, and their bosses. So we need to start with that point of discomfort. And so I came up with this, just to finish, I came up with a traffic light system for start, stop. And it is the top 5. Can you see that? Oh, there we go. Is that okay?
Yes. Yeah.
So while we should think big, we should start with processes, small process improvements, existing processes really well understood, lots of human expertise around those processes, and we bring in some AI automation that can deliver a success for that AI working group within a matter of 1 to 2 months maximum.
Yeah.
During that time, some wonderfully big ideas will be surfacing from people within the organization. All of those should be captured to backlog for further refinement of those ideas, for feasibility assessment, for data analysis as to how those ideas could come to life, could be prototyped, or could be put out into a laboratory outside the tech stack. None of those should be suppressed. But an idea on its own, what's the 3% inspiration, 97% perspiration. So building, I think the theory around owning data lakes and using that model is to say, just know within your data space where your high confidence data is, your medium confidence, and start doing data segmentation. So you say, right, if we want to run a prototype on this key use case, then we need to work with that segmented data set within that space to prove the model success. Because we know that if we ran it across the entire data set at prototype phase, it might probably start hallucinating or crashing because we know there's issues in this segment of the data. So continually test and learn, measure impact upon, build on that success. I mean, a classic, that's the basis of the wheel. If there's not a continuous improvement and continuous delivery wheel, DevOps listeners will be music to their ears, then we're probably weakening our chances of success. And I think the final point is machine learning is often underspoken about. But the point is, central to this is machine learning off data, whether that's just a prompt, right? But it's still machine learning. But if humans aren't learning on a continuous basis alongside the machine learning, then arguably the impact for an organization is not just reduced, but arguably we're moving away. There's no value in machine learning unless the humans are learning alongside.
So you have invoked a question in me. So one of the challenges that I've had when we've honed in on a process that could benefit from AI is having access to the people who understand that process and are close to the data, as you've talked about, because those people have a day-to-day function, and people want the output, but they don't want to provide me the resource, which is being able to sit with the subject matter experts, I'll say, and and get that information out of them to produce the AI. That's one challenge I've had. Another challenge I've had is when I go to that person and tell them that we're going to build an AI and I need to extract information from them to do it, they don't want to give me it because it's a threat.
It's hoarded information. So you've took two absolutely brilliant ones. So let's start one at a time. Well, in fact, let's go in reverse. The second one is an issue of culture. If people are, and this is exactly why we've seen this year a lot of US organizations saying, we know that agentic AI is here, and therefore we can replace entire job functions with AI bots. So we should immediately let them go, free up that financial overhead, and use that as the basis of the funding of the AI budget. In many cases, I won't cite any examples on this call, but people could easily find them, organizations now rehiring at the back end of 2025 when they've created chaos, and outside that chaos and outside the threat of redundancy, when someone has seen their colleague leave the organization, undoubtedly culturally, they will hoard the information that their bosses currently know that they are the owner of to avoid then becoming redundant in the process. So the other aspect is, I think, what I would describe, what you described is the let's try AI as a side of desk project where we'll dedicate 10% of our thinking time and resource while we're wedded to existing processes that, again, are the basis of something that the organization clings to. Again, step up leadership, because I've got personal blood on my hands in this space. That one of the projects that we work with in the organisation I work with, we have taken 7 months to do something that should have taken 6 weeks, because we are context switching between day job and we've got something quite interesting in this field of AI context engineering. But 7 months to deliver that, to get us to our prototype, is arguably, we have to have a chat to ourselves, because if we're serious about the AI disruption that's coming to the nature of the way we work, then we need to also be brave enough about how it's resourced. And I think, again, similar to post 2000, there are lessons here when looking at the big Silicon Valley organizations. They're not doing AI as a side of desk. They're doing it as the new center, the new core of the value of their organization. So more difficult for traditional big regulated industries to think in the same way. But again, it's time for leadership to just move into 2026 with a different frame of mind. This isn't technology that's going away. And really, we need to look at. I mean, I think that's that key thing of saying we need to be committed more than our competitors to get that competitive advantage. And I think once the successes are there, it can snowball fast.
We talked about Google last week, which has set itself out now as being an AI first company. So I think, and
it's funny, isn't it? Because everyone's saying we're an AI first company, but I think Google have done a mighty good job of proving that that's not just hyperbole, especially given that their advertising model for internet search is a bit under threat.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was very interesting, Scott. Resonated.
Did it make sense?
It resonated. Yeah. As part of the workforce who is involved in that triangle and who faces those challenges and has those expectations to deliver, then absolutely resonates.
In the world of big consultants, I think a triangle with a wheel that goes round it. If the concept's understood, there's a space to do great work. If the concept's not understood, and there is that, as you say, that deterministic, a project that must deliver on time and on budget in a linear fashion, then that's setting ourselves up for failure.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for reminding me that we just need to go with the data we've got rather than procrastinating, trying to get it perfect.
Yeah. Thank you. And I'm going to reflect on what would we do. I'm going to reflect on what would we do with the divergence in the adoption of AI across the world to take that idea and package it in a fashion that would be acceptable, probably acceptable in number 10 Downing Street as it is today, but quite how Keir Starmer would take it to go and see his friends in the White House, I'm not quite so sure that they're definitely in a winner takes all mindset with regard to pretty much everything. But maybe it's a short-termist view, and our liberal democracies will survive, and the UN will survive if America keeps paying its dues, which sometimes it doesn't bother to do. Anyway, sounding cynical. Stop me.
Yeah, somebody's banging the drum, and in a space where all the media coverage that I see is about Nvidia's stock price, AI boom, a new model being released, nano banana, all these kind of chunks of content that people can get eyeballs and clicks on and serve their own agendas. I think to know that someone else is out there putting together a body of work like that with meaning that hopefully is going to affect the cause is just it's a huge positive, I believe. And I hope that the people that you mentioned, Keir Starmer and his aides who are specialising in this area, read it and
take it on
and take it forward and make sure that it gets eyes on it.
Yeah. Well, listen, on that, there's another thought there for a future podcast, Mark, which is, given Nvidia's incredible valuation of now way over $5 trillion now, we should return to this. It'd be good to do a tech assessment on Google's TPU architecture over GPU architecture, because probably a lot of people a number of months ago would have been saying, well, Nvidia is the only way you can get the processing power in order to win in the AI space. And I think for a future podcast, Google's TPUs and the way that China has architected their models differently, both in terms of DeepSeek and Kimi. We should have a look at that if you're up for that.
Cool.
That's like a trailer for a movie, leaving our listeners.
Yeah.
Right. Well, listen, have a great rest of day, and thanks. Hopefully, we can go edit free on this one. I think we've almost run to time, but that was a good way to finish. So, thank you very much, sir.
All right, Scott. Bye for now.
Okay. Cheers, Mark. See you later. Thanks.
Coffee.